The storage unit smelled like mothballs and missed opportunities. I'd been putting off cleaning it out for months, but with my lease ending and a cross-country move looming, I couldn't avoid it any longer. Box after box of my life, accumulated and forgotten, waiting to be sorted into keep, donate, or trash. That's when I found it. A manila envelope, wedged between my college textbooks and a box of photos, labeled in my grandmother's spidery handwriting. For my little songbird, Ava. Songbird. She called me that since I was 5, warbling off-key renditions of Disney songs. I sat on the dusty concrete floor and opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a will, dated 10 years ago, 2 months before Grandma Rose died. I remembered that time. The family gathered around her hospital bed, her children bickering over who would handle the funeral arrangements while she was still breathing. "I don't have much," she'd whispered to me then, holding my hand with her paper-thin fingers. "But what I have, I want to go where it's appreciated." "Don't talk like that, Grandma," I'd said. "You're going to be fine." But she wasn't fine. And according to my family, she died with nothing but debt and a few pieces of costume jewelry. Except this was said differently. Asterisk to my granddaughter, Ava Marie Thompson, I leave the property at 247 Sycamore Street, including the main house and the attached rental unit, all contents therein, and any income derived from said property. Asterisk. I read it 3 times. 247 Sycamore Street. Grandma's house, where I'd spent countless summers, where she'd taught me to bake apple pie and tend her garden. The house my family had told me was sold to pay for her medical bills. The house that apparently had a rental unit I'd never known about. My phone rang. My mother, with her uncanny timing. "Ava, honey, don't forget Sunday dinner. Your father's grilling." "Mom," I said slowly, "what happened to Grandma's house?" A pause. Too long. "What brought this on?" "I'm cleaning out my storage unit. Just thinking about her." "Oh, sweetheart. You know what happened? The house had to be sold. Medical bills, funeral expenses. These things are so costly." "Right. Of course." I hung up and immediately called my college roommate, Diana, who'd become a private investigator. "Dee, I need a favor. A big one. Legal or illegal? Gray area. I need you to look into a property for me." 3 days later, Diana called back. "Ava, you sitting down?" "Why?" 247 Sycamore Street is still owned by the Rose Thompson estate. Has been for 10 years. And there's definitely a rental unit. Been consistently rented for, wait for it, $3,000 a month. I did the math. 10 years. $3,000 a month. $360,000. Who's been collecting the rent? Property management company called Thompson Family Holdings. Registered to. She paused dramatically. Your Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet. Uncle Paul. My father's older brother. The one who drove a new Mercedes every year and took European vacations while complaining about the economy. Aunt Janet, who wore designer clothes to church and made snide comments about my thrift store finds. There's more, Diana continued. The property taxes, maintenance, everything's been paid from a bank account in the estate's name. An account that's been regularly deposited into and withdrawn from. Want to guess who's listed as the executor? Uncle Paul. Bingo. But here's the interesting part. There's no record of the will being probated. It's like they just assumed control. I thought about Sunday dinner. About sitting across from the people who'd stolen from me for a decade. Who'd lied to my face while collecting rent on my grandmother's house. Dee, can you get me copies of everything? Bank records, rental agreements, tax documents? Already on it. Ava, what are you going to do? I'm going to Sunday dinner. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house with an apple pie and a folder thick with evidence. The whole family was there, Mom and Dad, Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet, my cousins Brandon and Stacy. Even my Aunt Linda had driven up from Sacramento. Ava, Mom hugged me. You made Grandma's pie. Seemed appropriate, I said, setting it on the counter. Actually, I've been thinking about Grandma a lot lately. Such a shame she died with nothing, Aunt Janet sighed, fingering her new tennis bracelet. But at least she's not a burden anymore. Janet, my mother scolded. What? It's true. Those final years were so expensive. About that, I said conversationally. I was cleaning out my storage unit and found something interesting. I pulled out the will. The room went silent. Uncle Paul's face drained of color. Is that? My father started. Grandma's will. Leaving me her house. The one you all told me was sold. Now, Ava, Uncle Paul stood, using his lawyer voice. Estate matters are complicated. You don't understand. I understand that 247 Sycamore Street has been renting for $3,000 a month for 10 years. I understand that Thompson Family Holdings has been collecting that rent. I understand that you've stolen $360,000 from me. Stolen? Aunt Janet's voice went shrill. How dare you? We maintained that property. You maintained it with its own rental income. After paying expenses, there's still over $200,000 unaccounted for. Where is it? This is ridiculous, Uncle Paul blustered. AWOL means nothing if it wasn't probated properly. You have no claim. Actually, I pulled out more papers. I had a lawyer look into it. Turns out, failing to probate a will, especially when you're taking estate assets, is fraud. Criminal fraud. And the statute of limitations hasn't run out. My cousins were staring at their parents in shock. Brandon, the golden child who'd just bought a house, was doing the math in his head. Stacy, who'd had her entire college paid for while I'd taken out loans, looked sick. You can't prove anything, Uncle Paul said, but his voice was weak. Can I? I spread out the bank statements Diana had somehow obtained. Deposits from the property management company into the estate account. Withdrawals to your personal account. That Mercedes. Paid for 3 months after you started collecting rent. Janet's kitchen renovation? Funded by Grandma's house. Brandon's down payment? Stacy's tuition? All traceable to the estate account. Mom. Brandon looked at Janet. Is this true? We were protecting the family assets. Janet snapped. Ava was young, irresponsible. I was 18, I said quietly. Working 2 jobs to pay for college because you all said there was no money to help me. Living on ramen while you vacationed in Italy on my grandmother's rental income. Ava, my father finally spoke. Did you know? The pain in his voice almost broke me. My father, the younger brother, always in Paul's shadow, always deferring to his judgment. No, Dad. They told you the same lie they told me. Paul, my father turned to his brother. Tell me she's wrong. Tell me you didn't steal from my daughter. From your mother's estate. Uncle Paul's silence was damning. All these years, my mother whispered. We struggled. Told Ava we couldn't help with college. Watched her work herself to exhaustion. And you had her money. It wasn't her money. Paul exploded. Mom was senile when she wrote that will. Why should a teenager get a house? I'm the eldest. I managed her care. You deserved. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. You visited her once a month. I was there every day after school. I held her hand through chemo. I slept in the hospital chair. I was the one she talked to about her life, her dreams, her regrets. You saw a dying woman with assets. I saw my grandmother. Fine words, Janet spat. But you can't do anything now. It's been too long. Actually, I can. And I will. You have 2 options. 1, we handle this quietly. You return every cent with interest. I take possession of my house. We tell everyone you've been managing it for me until I was ready. Your reputation stays intact. And option 2? Paul asked through gritted teeth. I file criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse. Yes, that's what it's called when you steal from an estate. I sue for damages. Everyone finds out exactly what you did. Your country club membership, your reputation, Brandon's job at the firm that only hired him because of your connections, all gone. You wouldn't, Janet whispered. We're family. Were we family when you lied to me? Were we family when you watched me skip meals to pay rent while you spent my money? Were we family when you told me Grandma died with nothing while you were cashing rent checks? The room erupted. Janet crying. Paul threatening. Brandon demanding answers. Stacy having a full meltdown about her trust fund. My parents sitting in shocked silence. I stood up. You have 48 hours to decide. Full restitution or criminal charges. Ava, wait, my father called. Where are you going? To see my house. The one I've apparently owned for 10 years. The drive to 247 Sycamore Street was surreal. I'd avoided this neighborhood since Grandma died. Too painful to see her house belonging to strangers. But it wasn't strangers. It was mine. The key was under the 3rd garden gnome, same as always. Some things at least hadn't changed. But inside, everything was different. The walls were beige instead of Grandma's cheerful yellow. The kitchen had been updated with soulless granite. Her garden was neat and manicured, not the cheerful chaos of vegetables and flowers she'd loved. I sat on the porch steps and cried. Not for the money, though God knows I could have used it, but for the 10 years of lies. For the family who'd chosen greed over truth. For the grandmother who'd tried to provide for me, only to have her wishes ignored. The tenant, Mrs. Chun, found me there. Can I help you? I own this house. Just found out. She looked confused but kind. Would you like some tea? You look like you could use it. Over tea, she told me about the property management company, how they never fixed anything promptly, how they'd raised the rent 3 times. She'd been thinking of moving. Don't, I said. Things are about to change. That night, my phone exploded. Calls from various family members, some taking sides, others trying to mediate. I ignored them all until my father texted. They're going to pay. All of it. Paul broke down and confessed everything. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I should have protected you better. The next morning, I met with a real estate lawyer. By afternoon, I had a plan. 2 weeks later, I stood in a lawyer's office as Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet signed over everything. The money they'd taken with interest. The property management dissolved. Full control returned to me. They couldn't look at me. Janet had aged a decade in 2 weeks. Paul's hands shook as he signed. I hope it was worth it, I said as they prepared to leave. All those vacations, all those luxuries. I hope they were worth losing your family. You're the one who destroyed this family, Janet hissed. No, you destroyed it the day you decided my grandmother's love for me was worth less than your greed. They left without another word. I kept Mrs. Chun as a tenant, but lowered her rent to what it had been 10 years ago. Used some of the returned money to restore the house to how Grandma had kept it. Yellow walls, wild garden, wind chimes on the porch. The family fractured, as I knew it would. Brandon and Stacy eventually reached out, apologizing for benefiting from the theft even unknowingly. My parents stood by me, their relationship with Paul and Janet severed completely. I can't believe my own brother, my father said one day, helping me plant tomatoes in Grandma's garden. All these years lying to my face. He convinced himself he deserved it, I said. That's what greed does. It rewrites history until you're the hero of your own crime. 6 months later, I moved into the main house. Quit my corporate job. Started the nonprofit Grandma had always dreamed of, a music program for underprivileged kids. The rental income, properly managed, funded it beautifully. The first time a little girl called me Miss Ava and showed me her new violin, I heard Grandma's voice. What I have, I want to go where it's appreciated. It was appreciated, Grandma. Just 10 years late. As for Paul and Janet, they downsized to a small condo, their reputation in tatters when the story inevitably spread. Brandon lost his job when the senior partners learned why his father no longer golfed with them. Stacy had to take out loans to finish school. Sometimes I felt guilty. Then I'd remember the 10 years of struggle. The nights I'd gone hungry. The opportunities I'd missed. The lies they'd told so easily. My grandmother had wanted me to have a home. Instead, I'd gotten a lesson in how money corrupts, how family can betray, and how sometimes the best inheritance is learning to stand up for yourself. But I also learned this. Justice might be delayed, but truth has a way of surfacing. Even if it takes a decade and a dusty storage unit to bring it to light. The house on Sycamore Street is yellow again. The garden is wild. Wind chimes sing on the porch. And somewhere, I like to think Grandma Rose is smiling, knowing her little songbird finally found her voice.